What is up, my lovely people in Blue Tablet land? So for today's video, guys, I'm going to be drawing y'all this Creepy Nun. If that's something you guys are interested in, stick around and let's get started. So as always, I thought I'd start out by drawing her eyes. And for me, when I think of nuns, creepy is not what usually comes to mind. And the reason being is because when I went to school back in the day, it was run by nuns. So the nuns in the school that I went to wore an outfit called a habit, or at least that's what it's called. And it was black and white. But unlike this nun over here in the illustration, it was the opposite. Their entire habit was white, and just the section that they wore on their head was black. So when I seen this movie or The Nun for the first time, it was kind of intriguing and interesting in the aspect, where the entire habit that she wore was completely black. But then as the story progresses and you find out what exactly is going on, I think the black attire kind of seems appropriate, knowing that, it's not really a nun, it's just a demon undercover wearing the disguise of a nun's habit. For the most part, usually when horror movies are going to be launched, they usually start playing their trailers on shows, or rather during the shows that you're watching, and kind of get the hype going. And for this particular movie, The Nun, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. It was a regular day at work, or I was kind of taking my break and I was getting ready to drive to the next location because I used to be a delivery driver. And I completely forgot that the volume on the radio on the truck was turned up a little bit because I was listening to my music on the way to work. And I was listening to Pandora and I was listening to some sort of a podcast, and then all of a sudden it was time for a commercial, and here comes the nun, and it was like, The Nun, and I'm like, yeah, right, what is this gonna be like? Is it gonna be one of those regular horror movies which you're just gonna know exactly what's gonna happen when you see the first part? And I was like, you know what, well, let me give it a chance and see how it works out. So as obvious the trailer started and they show a nun. Well, she's not really a nun at the time because she's wearing white, and I guess she had not taken her vows or whatever. But anyway, she's headed down this black corridor or some sort of a dungeon or room under the church, and out of nowhere you see this nun wearing the black, but you can't see the face. And what's cool is you kind of think you know what's gonna happen, and the camera pans away and you see her walking, and then it pans to the nun behind her and you see that nun there. You're like, oh, okay, she's gonna get her. And then when she turns back to look, the nun isn't there. So you're like, okay, something's gonna happen. And before you can realize what's gonna happen, this nun just comes running out of the sideway. I was like, boom! I was like taken apart because of it. The speakers, as I said, right, the speakers in the truck were that loud, and I was like, oh crap! I was like, but man, I think when I watched the trailer and I watched it again for a second and third time, I was like, man, I think this is gonna be one of those cool movies. And right enough, the special effects, the story of how it all unfolded and all came together. So it's one of those, it's not like a horror movie, but it's more like, I would say, those jump scare kind of movies. For me, when it comes to movies, whether it be the action movies or something that's got suspense and all that, I think horror and gore is definitely on the top, because I think with these movies there's always some sort of a jump scare associated with it, and there's going to be some sort of a story. And the things what I like the most in all these movies is how they make things look so realistic, whether it be the fake blood, or something being decapitated, or just something that's unrealistic and they make it look so real. I think that's the fun part I like about these movies. And especially watching documentaries on movie magic and kind of how they put all these things together and all that stuff. And I think maybe that's the reason why I like Halloween so much, because it's all about the creepy crawly and the different characters of like Chucky and Frankenstein and the Annabelle doll, and it just goes on and on. And then every year it's kind of cool to see what new movies might be coming out. But I think, yeah, for sure, the Creepy Nun is definitely one of those characters which I really enjoy, in the aspect of, as I said, you don't usually anticipate a nun to be horror, and you envision it being like this little older lady that's maybe got glasses and probably walking around with the Bible. And then suddenly you see this, and then your whole perspective of the nun is kind of changed. But I think living in the US for so many years, it was interesting for me to see that the priests and nuns over there all wear black, whereas when I was growing up in Kuwait, all the nuns and priests wore white. So I was always curious as to what is the reasoning behind it, and if anybody out there is religious and knows what that symbolism is for this particular change of why one wears black and the other wears white, just drop a comment below and let me know, because I was always curious about that. I've always wanted to ask a priest, but never really got down to it. So for the details of her, I kind of did it off camera and just didn't record it, because I felt like it would just be redundantly boring to just see me drawing lines all over her cape, or over her habit. And when it comes to details, just like shadowing, it's just something you can use it and try trial and error and see what you like and don't like. I kind of darkened up or used a different darker background for the actual illustration now, because I figured, since she's gonna have a dark outfit, and so it has a good contrast. I chose the dark gray for her habit and white for her inner part of it, I guess, and then use these accents of orange to kind of give it that whole Halloween kind of spin off. And then this beige kind of color for her face. And then for her eyes, kind of wanted to give it a little beige, a little darker beige from her actual face. Or actually a lighter beige, not darker. And then for her eyes now, I kind of wanted to pick that nice yellow, which I've picked for most of the characters in this series. And I think something about the yellow eyes makes it look kind of that creepy cute. And let's see, for the patches, I just figured I'd keep it yellow and not make it too overwhelming. And then now for her fingernails, kind of gave her this little cool look, so she looks like she has these painted yellow nails. As I said, the coloring part is pretty much all up to you guys. You can pretty much change it up and pick the colors you want it to have your illustration, like a light brown for the cross. And then I figured for the inside of her mouth, I'd do this lightish red, but then you'll see in a little bit, kind of change that and kind of change it up to a green, because that has that nice slime look to it. So now for the shading of here, guys, I pretty much did the same techniques I was using in the other illustration that I've done prior to this, but the only difference in this one is I chose this layer to be at the 40% opacity, and the reason for that is because I was working with darker colors. And this again, I guess, is just me doing trial and error, because when I did it started it at 30% originally, or before I was recording rather, I noticed that it was looking way too light, and you were not able to see none of the or at least the camera was not catching any of the shading. So I kind of bumped it up to a 40, and then for the other half of the shading, you'll see that I changed it up to the 50% mark. And that I said, as I said before, is it all depends on the illustration that you're doing. If you use light colors, you can get by with doing the 30% as the first layer and then 40% as the backup shadow. But if you're doing darker colors, then you just bump that up and then work accordingly. So far for this entire Halloween playlist, I've had a good time and enjoyed coloring Chucky, the creepy, weird looking witch. What else did I color? Was it the yes, Mr. Pennywise the clown? And then I believe it was, I think, the jar of eyeballs. But what's unique and cool about all of them is the fact that each one of them requires their own technique of shading, and each character and each prop was just fun altogether up until now, So as I said, guys, I've enjoyed doing this playlist, and I think everything that comes together for it is a whole fun process. The illustration part, the coloring, the shadow, and that's why, as I said, drawing for me is very therapeutic, and it's always fun to think of all the things that I can possibly still draw out and, make possible playlists on. And if you guys hear any random noises in the background, it's because today they are celebrating Diwali, which is a Indian or a Hindu festival, and for some odd reason they feel the need to burst crackers, which is part of the celebration. But gosh, it gets annoying after a while. So if you hear a loud bang, that's what it is. So over here now, I just use the selection tool for the remainder of the shadow process. And that again is totally up to you as to whether you want to use it or not. And now for the final highlights. I just kept it strictly in the face area because, when you look at the character, for the most part, the whole character is kind of in this dark habit clothing, or the habit is kind of dark, obviously. So there's not really a whole lot of shadow going on unless the fabric is some sort of a silky fabric, which I don't think it is. I think it's some sort of a cloth. So I figured the best place to do highlights would be on her face. And I think the highlights would most probably indicate that, it's some sort of a sweaty glints or shine on the face, which is not a very fun thing to illustrate. But, since we're in the spirit of Halloween, I figured I'd give her that nice gooey, spitty, that gross kind of look, because obviously she's not by no means a holy nun. So yeah, then some accents for these sleeves over here. And I think when you draw something that has got these dark colors and you give these bright accents, it really brings out the whole character of the actual thing, or the actual illustration that you're doing. Alrighty people, let's go ahead and wrap this illustration up of the Creepy Nun. And I'd like to say a special thanks to all of my followers and to the new people that may have signed on, and well, not signed on, but actually stopped by to look. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care of yourselves, guys. Bye for now.